Welcome to today's episode of Alpha Live. We have a special event sponsored by Crowe. Now, before we get into the discussion, let's learn a little bit more about Crowe.
Crowe is one of the best places to work. Crowe offers a variety of development resources, such as leadership programs, access to continued learning, exchange programs, and transfer opportunities. At Crowe, new ideas guide our future and help us chart a path for continued success. Firm revenue is directly invested in new product development to expand on ideas brought forward by our people. Crowe also offers a number of benefits and initiatives that make this great place to work even better. The flexibility of choosing to work where you work best, whether that's in the office, at a client space, or off-site. We empower our team to work where they are most productive. Having a diverse workforce doesn't just benefit the people at Crowe, it contributes to innovation and is fundamental to business success. Crowe offers a total well-being package that promotes physical, emotional, and financial wellness. Community involvement is a hallmark of Crowe's nearly 80-year history. We provide paid time off for volunteering, and we align our corporate charitable contributions with the volunteer efforts of our team. These are just a few things that make Crowe one of the best places to work.
Thank you so much, Crowe, for your partnership with Alpha and how you always embrace the Alpha Familia. The long-standing partnership has produced such dividends for our community. It is amazing. Today, we're going to showcase the importance of recognizing the difference between the perception and reality when it comes to early career paths and all career paths, and embracing new opportunities. And before we get into the panel, let's learn a little bit more about who our guests are today. Brenda, thank you so much for being here. I want to read a little bit about your bio first before we get into it, because you have an amazing background. So for those that do not know Brenda Torres, she is the Chief Operating Officer overseeing Talent Solutions, Diversity, Equity and Inclusion, Partner Affairs, Global Services, and Geographic Office Leaders. Previously, Brenda served as the partner in charge of audit quality and operations in the Audit and Assurance Services Group, and as one of the engagement partners for audit of public employees' retirement systems. She has more than 27 years of experience delivering audit and assurance services to public employees' retirement systems, ERISA plans, and I may be saying that incorrectly, and you'll correct me at some time later, I'm sure, and privately held companies in a variety of industries. She also holds a bachelor's degree in business administration and accounting from the University of Notre Dame. Brenda, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I'd love for you to share a little bit about your story and your background, which I think is an amazing one.
Hey, Damien, thank you. And I'm hoping I can match your energy because you're always so energetic. This is awesome. So thank you for having us. Truly humbled. So yeah, share a little bit about my journey. It's fun when you get to reflect on these things. As you stated, I've been at Crowe for over 27 and a half years. Joined right out of college. And I think I kind of followed the path that was expected as an accounting major. Looked at public accounting, and there's a lot of really great reasons that I chose Crowe. A lot of it had to do with what the firm stood for, what the firm had to offer. I'm from South Bend, Indiana, which is where Crowe was founded and was the largest office that we had at the time when I joined 27 years ago. So I joined as an auditor, which may or may not be exciting to some of you, but certainly it's been a great career choice for me. And Damien, as I go through this story, I'm going to share a little bit professionally and personally as we go. When I joined, I didn't have a set goal or milestone that I wanted to achieve. So to sit here in front of all of you and be the COO is probably something that I didn't aspire to, nor could I have imagined, frankly. And a lot of it for me all along has been a thirst and a thrive for learning. I just like to be challenged. I like to take on new opportunities. But, something happened pretty pivotal in my career, Damien, really early on. So I had been at Crowe for only a year. I was 22 years old and I had a baby. So I was a single mom, and I welcomed my biracial child, and was very welcomed into the firm actually as well. He's been a part of my journey at Crowe. And so I think when you become a mom that early on, and certainly a single mom, it kind of changes you, and it changes a little bit about your priorities. I had to grow up very quickly. Crowe was always very supportive. I would say I had a number of mentors, a number of sponsors, people who really guided me, saw talent and gave me opportunities, but certainly understood that there were a number of things that I had to balance along the way. So like I said, started my career in audit, specializing primarily in manufacturing and distribution. I did a lot of commercial clients too. I had some healthcare, a HUD project, and then it was ERISA plans, Damien, if I could correct you on that. But I also did employee benefit plans during the summer months, kind of your 401ks, your pensions, your health and welfare plans. And as I went through my career journey, I actually met my husband at Crowe. So he was in a different office, and we actually met through just basically internal learning. I had an opportunity at a young age to teach some CPE. So it's another fun thing that you could do. And it was actually on, Damien, these ERISA plans is what I was teaching the CPE was about. So anyway, he was in this course. He called me afterwards, asked me some questions, and we had developed a relationship. Crowe was very supportive. We had to do different things, and so certainly wanted to follow all the rules and the guidelines. So Rick and I got married. So this is a picture of my family. So on the left is my oldest son, Austin. And he was the little guy that joined me when I'd only been at the firm for a year. And then my husband and I, Rick, went on to have two other children, Anthony and Alyssa, and that's our dog, Allie. So as you can tell, I was pretty big into the A names, if you will. And we're somewhat of a blended family, or melting pot, if you will. My two youngest actually are quarter Hispanic. So my husband is half Hispanic. So certainly trying to learn about cultural awareness and, growing up and having kind of a blended family in that regard has always been really good for me and good for us. I transitioned, Damien. I was asked to take on an opportunity probably about 7 or 8 years into my career. The firm was changing its focus and really wanted to focus on a strategy around going after ERISA plans. So I was asked to say, hey, is this something that you want to take on? So certainly I said yes. I actually enjoyed that part of the practice and took on that opportunity to do that and started to focus 100% of my time in that area. That really then migrated into the public sector, where I started going after public employee retirement systems. So that's more in the government, kind of very large state pension plans, if you will. And that was a pivotal moment in my career. One of the largest clients, certainly of mine and my tenure at Crowe, but also of the firms in our audit and assurance practice. It was a very challenging opportunity. I got to work with people all across the firm, different geographies, different business units, different areas of specialization. Really challenged me to grow, think on my feet, be very agile. Probably learned to have difficult conversations with clients in a very respectful, professional manner, if you will. And then when our current CEO took over as the managing partner of our audit and assurance practice, he asked if I would take on a different leadership opportunity to be the partner in charge of operations. And so at that time, that would be anything relative to our people, financially, HR, those sorts of things. And so our audit and assurance practice is about a third of our business. And so I took on that opportunity and worked with him. And then when he became CEO, he asked me if I wanted to take on the COO role. And Damien, I'll tell you, you kind of grow up seeking opportunity, continuously being challenged, but I don't know that I had a defined career path, that I had a defined goal, that I could have told you 27 years ago that I wanted to be a COO. And what I think I've been very fortunate about is to have multiple careers, but always been with the same firm or the same company. And I love this graph, right? So the perception is you need to know exactly what you're going to do and you need to follow that path. When in reality, this is how it happens. It's kind of all over the place. And, if I would have to give maybe career advice to others that are on the phone, Damien, what I would say is to be agile, to be opportunistic. If I step back and ask myself, well, why did you take on these opportunities? Did you feel like you couldn't say no? I felt like I could say no. I think I had a lot of faith and I think a lot of trust that others wouldn't ask me to take on these roles if they didn't think that, one, I could be successful, and two, if they didn't think that they could support me in a way to help me be successful. Because let's be honest, none of us do this alone, right? Kind of takes a village. It takes a village at home. It takes a village at work. And so I think, time and time again, maybe, Damien, when I took a risk, it panned out for me. But a lot of that had to do with the support that I really received from others throughout my journey. And that's really, I think, what it's all about. I think that's really special about Crowe. I think when you're 22 years old and you're a single mom and you look at all the people who supported you, it really incites a lot of loyalty. And it showed that the firm really cared. And now, I look at this and say, how can I give back to the firm? The firm has given so much to me, and now it's my opportunity to give back. So I'll pause there. That's a little bit about my journey. I don't know if you have anything else that you want me to share.
Yeah, so a couple things. I mean, one, I think you hit on so many key points throughout your intro there, and around you didn't plan on being the COO, so the flexibility that you had to have in order to be able to be open to that opportunity. Life isn't perfect, right? So how did you find the strength to continue pushing forward to be able to just continuously progress in your career? Like, how did you just be able to deal with life isn't perfect? You have work stuff, you have family stuff, you have all this sort of thing. What gave you the strength to do that? What gave you the support?
Yeah, Damien, that's a good question. I'm going to share a little bit of a story. I can tell you I was probably only in my career 1 or 2 years, and somebody came and did this presentation, a very impressive woman. And I'll tell you, she seemed perfect. She was married. She had 2 kids. She was on multiple boards. She was a partner. And I'll tell you, I remember this to this day. And I sat there and I said, that'll never be me, and felt like I couldn't be that person. And then I sit there and look at this audience and they might think my life has been perfect. And it's very much far from the truth. I think what kept me going was really that support and really that drive for learning. And I really enjoyed a lot of the things that I was doing. I think when I got a career in accounting and you think about numbers and you think about debits and credits and being an auditor and being professionally skeptical, I think what was so exciting, Damien, were all the different things that I could do, that I was like coaching and mentoring people, that I was looked at as a role model for other, frankly, just working parents. I don't know if it was even just women, but just working parents, that we all have our struggles, right? And so how do we work through them together? I'm a big believer of being authentic and being vulnerable and really sharing the challenges that you go through. I have a very supportive family outside of my husband and my children. My parents, my siblings have always been very supportive. And so I think that helps you and you find enjoyment in what you're doing. So then you just want to do more of it. And I think that's really what kept me going. I never felt defeated, felt supported. And so I guess I kept growing, really. And I think I just put myself in position to open up that next opportunity.
So you hit on the word authentic, and I want to get around to that in a second because I think it's important that we hit on that topic. Before that, though, you've had a lot of different careers while at Crowe, it seems like. And I think a lot of people right now are trying to figure out, given the craziness of life over the past year and change, a lot of folks are trying to think through how do they redefine themselves as they're moving forward. Do you have any advice on how you think about that, or how you went about changing careers within the same company, but continuously evolving yourself to be able to move forward? Like, do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I do, Damien. So one thing is, you got to know what you're passionate about. Like, what do you really like? And I will tell you, I'm really passionate about people. I love developing relationships with people. This will probably come as no surprise. I'm an extrovert, but I really like people. I like developing relationships with people. I like listening and I like helping others. So I think part of that is what defined me. And then can you become good at something, right? And so I think I've been a pretty decent auditor. I'd like to say, but you learn a lot of different skills, right, relative to the business. And so if you can put together your passion with what you're good at, I think you'll find opportunities to retool yourself. And I think I had these stretch assignments through these different roles that I took on, and it stretched me in ways that I probably didn't know that I was capable of. But again, behind me, I felt like I had those cheerleaders, those people that were really encouraging me to do more, that found value in what I was delivering. And so part of it was I listened to them, and I think I kept, moving forward.
And that part, it's fascinating. One of the pieces of advice I've been given before, and you hit exactly on it, is be open to what those that care about you and are supporting you may think is a good opportunity for you, knowing what they know about you, right?
Yep.
Being open to those opportunities, you never know what may be there next. So let's circle in on the authentic self, and then we to close out this segment in a second. But what does it mean to you to be your authentic self? What do those words mean to you?
I think it just means being vulnerable. I think it's sharing my story. It's sharing that life hasn't always been perfect. I feel very blessed with a great family, but we've had our challenges, right? My youngest really deals with mental health challenges and struggles. And instead of hiding behind that and portraying that everything is perfect, it's being willing to open up about those challenges. And Damien, what's so interesting that I found, and I encourage people to do this, and if you're comfortable, which is I'll listen to something someone tells me, right? And then I'll share a little bit about my own life and my own journey. And it gets that person to really open up. And I think what I always take away is we are more similar than we are different. At all levels of the organization, people may look at me like a COO, and I might look at a very inexperienced new person to the firm, and I tell them, you have so much to offer, and you and I are really not that different. Where we're different is I've worked a lot longer than you have, and I've had more life experiences. But I was more like you at that younger, staff level, if you will, than not like you. And so I think part of it is showing up, being vulnerable. We had a call. We maybe Chris will talk a little bit about this, these moving forward events. And on one of these calls, Damien, I'm just going to be very open with you. I was listening to the audience talk about things that were really driving emotion in them. And I had a fear. Do I tell my story? Do I tell how I felt? And I got really emotional, like to the point that I spoke up with tears. This is as a COO of $1 billion organization. There's a lot of risk in that. And I can tell you the number of people that reached out, they were pinging me, trying to give me that virtual hug. But I thought it was important, again, to articulate that I have maybe not been exactly in your shoes, but I feel your passion, I feel your emotion, and I have it too. And I want to tell everybody that's okay. That's okay to have that emotion. That's okay to have that vulnerability. I knew it was a risk. There's probably some people that didn't agree with that, and that's okay too. And I respect that. So that's, to me, I think, Damien, what it means to be authentic.
I love that. And you shared this analogy with me, the highlight reel, blooper reel. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, because that hit me. Like, I was like, yes, that is so accurate. You want to talk a little about that?
Yeah, so it's funny because I think it's easy to share the highlights, right? It's easy to have that highlight reel, like, look how awesome I was, and I did this, and I took this step. But I think what I enjoy is almost the bloopers, Damien, a little bit. And it's when things didn't go right, or things were a little bit funny, or maybe that's not exactly what I thought to say, or maybe that's not exactly how I wanted to show up. And the reason I think the bloopers are important is they're learning opportunities. That is part of what I would call your growth and development, professionally and personally. And I think you have to embrace those. None of us are perfect. I'm a big believer in moving forward and not looking back. I think the past informs us. I think you have a lot to learn from it. but I get really inspired about the future. And so then I just tell myself, how are we going to move forward and do the best that we can? And so I would just say that the bloopers are just as important as those highlights.
Yeah, love that. Love that. So a couple things. One, for everybody that's watching, please submit questions. We're going to do a Q&A at the end with all the panelists. Is there a piece of advice that you'd like to give, something actionable that people can do as they watch this and are being inspired by your journey in and of themselves? What do you think that they can do? What's something actionable?
Yeah, well, I would say a couple different things. One, know what you're passionate about, identify what you're good at, and then look for those opportunities you can put those two things together. So that would be one thing I would do, Damien. The other thing is, and I'm going to steal it because you said it, and you said it really well early on. And I would just say that as you think about your career and being authentic and what you want to do, trust those people who are in your ear. Trust that they have your best interest at heart if they know you, if they see your talent, and if they're supporting you to take on an opportunity. I would have some trust that they're not going to guide you wrong, that they know what they're talking about if they know you.
Love that. Thank you so much, Brenda. You're going to be back on in a bit.
Okay.
We're going to shift over, but so don't go anywhere.
I will be here whenever you need me. Thanks, Damien.
Outstanding. Thank you so much, Brenda. Now we're going to go over to Chris Mitchell. Now, Chris, as he jumps in over here, I want to give a little bit of an introduction. Chris is the Chief Diversity Officer for Crowe, and he is responsible for cultivating and driving an innovative and programmatic plan to support a culture of inclusion in line with the firm's vision and strategy. He also serves as the chair of the Inclusion Excellence Council, which oversees initiatives that work to understand, appreciate, and address the various perspectives and needs of all Crowe people, their clients, and communities. He holds a bachelor's degree in accounting from the University of Texas and an MBA in technology management from Touro University. With Crowe for 8 years, Chris brings more than 26 years of risk management, finance, and IT consulting experience. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today. Truly appreciate it. And I'm going to ask you the same start-off question that I asked Brenda. Can you tell us a little bit about your story and how did you take your journey from where you were to where you are now?
Hey, Damien, thank you for having us, and just happy to be here doing Hispanic Heritage Month. First and foremost, want to put that out there. You know, my journey is definitely unique. When I graduated high school way back when, and I will say in 1988, believe it or not, people were living back then. And I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I'd just seen the movie Top Gun, believe it or not. And I said, you know what, I think I want to be a pilot. And I joined the Air Force. Not knowing exactly where I was going for my first assignment, which my first assignment was actually in Korea. And I was very successful in the military. But then I found out once I got my degree and once I got teed up for pilot training, that unfortunately I would not be able to be a pilot because of my vision and my sight. And at that point in time, I just didn't know what I wanted to do beyond that. I knew that I still wanted to be plugged in and make money, make a living, because my dad always said, find something, but make sure you can make money at it. And I was very fortunate. So I started my career in accounting back in 1995, believe it or not, and spent about almost 20 years before Crowe came along and said, hey, Chris, we've got a fantastic opportunity for you to join us. And my reason for selecting Crowe was simply this. I just got a good feeling, good vibe from the people who interviewed me. I said, wait, man, this is a place that I think I want to hang out. And I've been the type of person that would jump around, go from organization to organization, trying to find whatever that is, greener grass, and realize it's just grass and it all requires fertilization. So very fortunate to start as managing director here at Crowe back in the Dallas office. And I was in client facing for a while, doing internal audit, governance and compliance, having a blast, having a lot of success. They made me partner. But all along, I've been plugged into DE&I initiatives, whether it was the BRG, whether it was being on the podium and sharing my story. And it just always interested me in making sure that we can network and work together as a family. And Jim Powers, the then CEO, took notice of that. He says, Chris, how do you like doing what you're doing? I said, well, I enjoy doing what I'm doing. And he says, no, what are your thoughts on, and Jim was always about think big, and I'm like, okay, think big. What does that mean? He says, what do you want to do here? I'm like, well, and I didn't know. I had a list of stuff that I'd written out as a result of my church and things that I was plugged into. And I said, I think I'd like to be working with people. I'd like to be plugged in chief diversity officer role. And his eyes got really big, like mine are now. And I was like, okay. And he says, Chris, you can do anything you want to do. Okay. And it started there. And now I'm the CDO. It's baffling. It's confusing. I never thought that someone who wanted to be a pilot would one day be a CDO. From my upbringing as a child, I didn't grow up and have a fancy home in a really popular neighborhood. My parents were hard workers. My dad was in construction. My mom stayed home with us, and it was a journey. And then when I got ready to go and figure out what I wanted to do, and some may have turned to their parents and say, hey, I'd like to go to college. My dad would be like, yeah, that's fantastic. So how are you going to do that? So he was one of those types which really helped me and inspired me to do my very best and actually to become what I am today. I had no idea I'd be here, but things work out. When you say you start out with a predetermined plan, I started out and I want to be a pilot, and now I'm the chief diversity officer at Crowe. So anything's possible. If I can get here, anybody can get anywhere. So I'm excited.
I appreciate you sharing that, right? And I want to jump a little bit more into the topic of authentic self and how that plays a role in a person's journey that we've been talking about, right? This session around the journey and perception and reality could be very different. So first I want to lean into what does authentic self mean to you, and then go a little bit more into how that plays into how someone can go about their journey in their career. So what does authentic self mean to you?
In my career, being authentic is just being able to show up and not be prejudged. You don't know me. No one really knows you. So I want to be myself and be comfortable being myself and be accepted and just blend in and get to know everyone like everyone else does. So the sense of belonging and acceptance comes from, in my opinion, being able to bring your authentic self to work every day and be accepted and be valued for who you are.
Have you always felt that you could bring yourself every day, or did something happen that made you feel like you could? Has that always been a part of you, or did it evolve?
Well, I think at Crowe's made it easy to do that. Every time I've stepped up and I've wanted to do something, no one prejudged me. No one said I couldn't do it. They gave me a chance and an opportunity to do it. So I've always felt comfortable being myself. I like to joke up. I like to cut up. We have a blast here at Crowe, and that's accepted. But we're also very professional, and we do what we need to do to help our clients and be successful as an organization. But I've never felt like I couldn't be my authentic self. And if I did, I probably wouldn't stick around. But at Crowe, they made me very comfortable. And that's still a challenge for us as an organization. The sense of belonging is very hard to figure out. And being authentic and being comfortable with who you are and presenting that and being accepted and valued, we haven't all figured it out. We've got challenges here at Crowe, just like any organization. But I think the structure's in place. I think it feels inviting. I think our moving forward together sessions that Brenda shared on, where we, during those very difficult times, would come together as a team and figure it out. We would listen. We would share our stories. We wouldn't try and give advice right then and there in the moment. That's not what it's for. But everyone that attended those calls, which we had anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 folks on those calls, felt very comfortable and very open and very transparent. And I think it's just something that would stick. And I think it created that environment, that sense of belonging that people got accustomed to. And that's what I felt when I joined Crowe. And I was just happy that we were able to leverage that all of last year.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I'll say this, right, from my experience with Crowe, and I hadn't known Crowe very well prior to stepping into this role, but the values of the organization are pretty consistent with individuals as I meet you all from in different aspects and different contexts. Everybody seems to have a very similar values tree. And I think that alignment comes through pretty well from an organization standpoint. Let me ask you this. If someone is out there feeling like they're in a place where they just don't feel comfortable being their authentic self, what advice do you have for them to start getting comfortable being a little uncomfortable and getting out there for yourself?
You know, there are so many networks that are available to us here at the firm. Start with the BRGs, the business resource groups. That's a way to plug in and not feel like you're by yourself and that you're alone. I would always leverage my mentors and my sponsorship as support coming up. I could always lean on them to say, hey, I feel uncomfortable. And they knew me very well. And they'd say, Chris, well, you need to get comfortable being uncomfortable. I get that sometimes. And I'm like, okay, what does that really mean? But the whole thing was, you know, not everyone is going to be inviting when you show up. You know, you extend the olive branch, you step up, you plug in, you be a part of the organization, you participate, you go out on those lunches, you go out to those dinners, you be plugged into those various groups and forums and be active. And that was good advice for me. So I would say first and foremost, it's just not being afraid to just plug in, not being afraid to extend the olive branch and make the first move, because there's a lot of value in that. And I've grown tremendously from that.
That's outstanding. And what I say is for me, authentic self means sticking to my values. And I tell people all the time, am I the same kid that was growing up in Harlem from maybe the way I dress is a little bit different, my haircut may be a little different, but my values are still the same from where I grew up. And that's what it means to me to be my authentic self. And to the point of looking to work at places where my values and the corporate values align, I think is something that a lot of people should consider that in terms of their lives and how they look to move forward with being able to be their authentic self and feel comfortable in an organization. And so I think you all recently made some shifts in values, and there was like one or two little shifts in the statements that were out there. I'm not sure if you want to talk a little bit about that. I think it was beautiful and brilliant, and really is a demonstrating of a leadership position that you're taking out there from a diversity inclusion standpoint.
You know, and I don't know if I can share that because I can't remember, but I will say this. We put a lot of effort and energy into that. Our values are everything at Crowe. Okay. I will share Shaping Your Better Tomorrow Together today. And I put some of that out there already. I probably shouldn't have, but it's imperative. Okay. It's imperative that we step out there and we understand ourselves first. Crowe is all about our people. We're all about our culture. This place is for real. When I first joined, I'm like, there's no way they're living their values. What is living your values? What does that mean? Because I'd never heard that being plugged into organizations. And I was plugged into several prior to joining Crowe, but they are intentional. They want you to understand that we care. They want to understand that values are a priority for us as an organization. And we want our people to feel like they're part of the equation, and we take it serious. So it's very attractive. If not only to me, but to a lot of individuals who have decided to make this their workplace. And it's just, there's a lot of energy and there's a lot of, how can I put it, excitement around the new values that are coming out.
Awesome. Fantastic. And so is there a last piece of advice that you would like to give? And again, you're coming back too, so you're not going anywhere, but is there a last piece of advice you'd like to give to folks that are watching?
You know, the best advice I received coming up and through the ranks is to be patient. Nothing happens overnight. You may want to be a pilot and you turn out to be a CDO, but along the way, you have to be very, very patient and allow things to come to you. I mentioned that I jumped around from job to job to job, trying to find the greener grass, and the grass is probably pretty green where I was. So just be patient and evolve and grow and just learn as much as you can. And it will work out. That I promise you.
Love that. And Chris, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to steal your "it's all just grass" comment. I'm going to use that one because I love that you are absolutely right. You know, the view of it's always green on the side. No, I love the "it's all just grass." And I think that goes into mindset, right? You know, your mindset is a big contributor to how you move on things. So Again, Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, for sharing your knowledge, sharing your journey. I think a lot of folks will see themselves in you. And so thank you for that. And we will be right back to you for the closing Q&A session. And now I'd love to go over to Derek Bang. Now, Derek serves as partner in charge of new markets in Crowe's consulting practice. Prior to this role, Derek served for 8 years as Crowe's chief strategy and innovation officer, leading strategy development, resource allocation, and strategy execution, as well as developing an innovation-driven culture throughout the firm and overseeing the firm's new product development fund. After joining Crowe, Derek invented Crowe's revenue cycle analytics, a software product which is used by over 1,200 hospitals for a net revenue reporting, and he is the named inventor on 2 patents. He is a member of Crowe's Inclusion Excellence Council and a leader in Crowe's Latinx BRG. Derek holds a bachelor's degree and MBA from Indiana University. Derek, thank you so much for being with us. I'm going to start with you the same way I started with everybody else. I'd love for you to give us a little bit about your journey.
Well, thanks, Damien. It's a great opportunity, and I love sharing the stage with you and your energy. So my story, I guess I'll start a little bit professionally, and I can talk a little bit about my personal background as well. Since you just read off my bio, in terms of, professional career, it probably goes back to when I started high school. I wanted to be a doctor. I thought it'd be really cool to help people. And I always had a lot of respect for the medical field. So I took Latin and biology, and I hated them both. So I pretty quickly figured out I might think it sounds great to help people, but I didn't do well in those classes, and I thought, well, maybe the medical field was not for me. But I was naturally good at math and accounting, and both of my uncles were accountants in Chile, and et cetera. I thought, well, that would make some sense, to try. So I went to Indiana University, Kelley School of Business, majored in accounting, got my MBA. And then as you get into industry and you learn more about opportunities, I learned that, a lot of accounting firms specialize in certain industries. And so I thought, well, I always liked healthcare. I always wanted to be a doctor. Maybe I can specialize in healthcare accounting. So I ended up going out of grad school to work for Ernst & Young in their healthcare practice. And then after a number of years, I felt it was a time to make a career change, as we'll talk about here some. And I wanted to do something maybe a little risky and entrepreneurial. In Crowe, I knew of Crowe, and they were a great firm, but they didn't have a healthcare consulting practice at that time. But I knew their values, I knew their reputation. And so I approached Crowe about me joining and potentially starting up a healthcare consulting practice. So I joined January 2005. I've been with Crowe 16 years now. And one of the most familiar activities for me at Crowe has been writing my own job description. So I started this new healthcare consulting thing, and to get it off the ground, it had to differentiate ourselves somehow, since we didn't have a big crew. It was just me and borrowing staff to deliver projects. So I thought I had an idea for a software product that could automate a lot of the things that I was doing very manually for my clients. So I used that innovation as a method to grow a business and grow a practice and build around the software product. So we had some success with that. And, as the practice grew, eventually the firm said, well, we like what you've been able to do here in healthcare. So let's try to do this more on a firm-wide level. So in 2013, they created this new position called Chief Innovation Officer. So
wait, I just want to chime in here for a second. So you're saying some success. I want to bring Brenda in here for a second, if we could bring her back on, because I think you're being very humble about what that means. Brenda, can you help us get some more context as to what does a little bit of success look like with respect to what Derek's talking about here?
Yeah, Derek is a humble guy, but man, is he innovative. He is a superstar, rock star from day one that I met Derek. So one of the solutions that Derek is talking about, just one alone, has generated over $100 million in revenue for our firm, which is incredible. I mean, it is just fantastic. And, I got to know Derek in a leadership program, and, just listening to his story and his innovative ideas. And if everybody caught it, remember, Derek said he took his accounting background and his passion for healthcare. And this is how he got there, and kind of look at that and created this new solution. So anyway, don't be so humble, Derek.
Yeah. Thank you, Brenda, for jumping in here for us a bit. And Derek, I know you were going to go into a little bit more about the innovation side, but so I want to ask a question before we also get into your personal journey, because your personal background also is phenomenal. And I want people to hear about that. What gave you the courage? What gave you the inspiration, whatever word you want to define on it, to be able to so many times, or maybe just the first time, to say, I'm going to create something that hadn't been done before, right? You went to a new place, started up a practice there. You went, and within that place started creating new roles and opportunities for yourself. How did you find the courage to do that?
Well, maybe part of my humility here, if that's what we want to call it, is, I know that, I didn't do it myself, and I joined an organization with great values, that as I was talking to Crowe, I could see the innovation, I could see the diversity within the firm of thought and the different talents that were here. And I always kind of joke to say, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants here in many ways. There's many other people that have enabled our organization to enable people like myself to be successful. So we kind of created a culture and environment where people can come in with a good idea, potentially, or maybe not so good idea, but either way, they can feel supported and feel to be vulnerable to say, I have an idea. Let's try and explore it. Whereas other organizations will just maybe say, stay in your lane.
So I want to double click on that for a second, because the number of people that have reached out, asking questions about, or talking about, I feel stagnated, or given the past year, I'm trying to find where my place in this world is really, but having a hard time taking those steps towards creating that journey. So tactically or tangibly, was it that you saw an opportunity that was out there that fit with what you wanted to do, and literally right away create your job description? Or did you identify a few people that you knew you would need to be able to support you in that first, have the conversation with them, then start moving it forward? How did you tangibly move from the idea in your head of what you wanted to achieve and the actual making it happen?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Crowe's core purpose for a long time has been building value with values. And I take that building value piece very seriously. And so, I mean, we partner with our clients. Part of the joy of doing consulting is you work with clients all over the country, and it allows you to see what the common problems are. And so as I was working with hospitals all over the country, I saw that everyone had the same problem with accounting for net revenue. And I was doing it very manually. And then, but I knew I didn't know anything about writing software code. I didn't know anything about creating an industrial strength application that, major health systems all across the United States would rely on, or if that was even feasible to do. So that's where I just sort of had to raise my hand and say, I have an idea, who knows something about X, Y, and Z. And fortunately, there were plenty of people within the firm that could connect those dots. And a lot of times innovation is identifying a major problem that's unsolved, and then connecting the dots to figure out, your knowledge and what other knowledge is needed to be able to bring that together. Sometimes it all exists at the right time, and you can pull it off. Sometimes it doesn't, and eventually it will get there. Just like, Apple had the idea for the iPhone, years before they actually could pull it off technically, because you need other technology and things to come together. But, that's sort of how it tends to work, and we've really embraced that here at Crowe.
I love that, right? And it ties into some of the earlier conversations we've been having, that your willingness to raise your hand, speak up, get the support network around you, build a team together that share the common vision. And you were what I would call the energizing leader, right? What I've learned is that you always need an energizing leader who can see a vision and galvanize the people around them. And your willingness to raise your hand, step up, stand up, speak up, allowed for this to occur. And you were in an environment that allowed for the diversity, it allowed for the new vision to feel safe in moving forward in that area, which I think is fantastic. And what I'd love to go into now a bit, and I know we're jumping around a little bit just because I think your background is amazing, wanted to hit on that innovation side, how you tangibly and tactically did that. So that's great there. Your personal journey. I think people need to hear about your background. You are from Latino descent. Can you tell us a little bit more about your personal background?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think with, seeing my bio and my name and maybe even my photo might not make you think that I'm someone of Hispanic descent. So my last name Bang is Danish, and on the screen is my mom, who's from Chile, and she fled Chile before the country was taken over by General Pinochet. And as the political environment there was deteriorating, she came to the United States and met my father in Pittsburgh. And she is a very brave, courageous woman, and I'm so proud to be her son. And nothing against my father, who's also an amazing man as well. But she came to the United States as an immigrant, and fortunately, I already spoke very good English too. And my father didn't speak Spanish at all, but they met and were married, etc. I'm the younger of two sons. But growing up in a sort of a southern town that we didn't feel very open to immigrants, and as my mom had a thick accent, even though she spoke very good English, and so going to church on Sundays and things like that, I would get picked on a little bit for my mom being an immigrant and being Hispanic. So I remember the kids would tease me and call me and her and I, chili dogs and things like that. And it made us not feel very good about our background. And so, I've sort of, recently learned there's a term called covering. So I've covered sort of my Hispanic heritage for a very long time. Because it was easier that way. There were fewer questions. I didn't like getting questions about that. And obviously, I've grown up here in the United States, and actually, there was no speaking of Spanish in our household other than when we had family visit and things like that. And so, I was never taught Spanish growing up. Sort of just kind of ignored my heritage in a lot of ways, not with any malintent. It was easier. We took the easier path. So applying to college, I was told, hey, you're Caucasian when you apply. We don't want anyone to potentially discriminate against you because you're a Latino, et cetera, or half Latino. So I really just kind of put it aside for a big part of my career. And then later on, as coming to Crowe, as we've tried to, I think as an organization, really help people embrace their authentic self, it's helped me better come to terms to say, there was no reason for that for a long time. There was no need for me to ever, not embrace my heritage as a Latino and all the great things that come along with that. And now I've gotten much more actively involved, within our Latino BRG here at Crowe with ALPFA, and it's really been a wonderful experience.
That's amazing. So first, I want to thank you for being vulnerable through the conversation and talking about those topics, right? I think that is going to resonate with quite a few people and hopefully give them some inspiration and motivation on how to move forward on things. And I also think it's important, you hit on one of the valuable things from a DEI perspective. What you all at Crowe are doing is extremely important and great, where people can feel more about being their authentic self. And I want to ask you the question of what does that mean to you? I think you've hit on it in various points of this conversation, but I want to ask the explicit question: what does being your authentic self mean? And then after that, I'd love for you to give any piece of advice, sort of takeaway to the group.
Yeah, I think the authentic self, I think, is just making sure you feel like you belong and you can be genuine. And when you can be genuine, then you can be most productive. In many ways, it's about productivity. And you can't be productive, I think, until you feel like you're included. And everything we do in business is really team oriented. And if you don't feel included in that team, if you can't be your authentic self, then you're not going to be as effective. So coming to Crowe, and you've heard Chris and Brenda also talk about sort of our values and things like that. From day one, I always felt valued. I felt included. And never had those concerns. It just hadn't really crossed my mind to say, it's probably safe here for me to actually talk about, being part Chilean and things like that. But it all gets back to, I think, being able to be included, And then that will empower you to then feel like my voice matters. And then when you think your voice matters, then you can take those risks and be even more vulnerable to say, hey, oh, by the way, I have an idea for solving all these other problems and things like that. Otherwise, you're never going to raise your voice.
Outstanding. Love that. So one last piece of advice as we're going to start bringing everybody back in. We've had some questions come through, and I don't know, we're running a little bit long, so we will not be able to get to all the questions. But as we bring folks back on, would love for you, Derek, share what piece of advice would you give to those that are watching, that's tangible that they could take forward with themselves?
Sure. A couple quick things. I mean, one would, this theme of covering, I think is important. And I would just advise, anyone that's watching or listening to not do it, if you're concerned about whether it's Hispanic or other ethnic or cultural backgrounds, don't do it. And if you feel like you have to, as for where you're working at, then it's probably not the right place for you. And there's probably plenty of other companies that would love to have you. So I think you'll feel better about yourself, and long term, I think you'll be more successful in somewhere where you can really be your authentic self. And then the second piece is really, I think I've always told people, think about your career in terms of chunks, 3 to 5 year chunks of time. And as Chris said, don't force it, be patient, but typically takes 3 to 5 years to master something. So, I started learning the basics of healthcare out of grad school, and it took me 3 to 5 years to better understand the industry. And that's when I got my idea for building a software product. And then it took me 3 to 5 years to get that off the ground. And then I got asked to be chief strategy and innovation officer. And I did that for a period of time. And now I'm doing something else, as well. But, similar to Brenda's diagram, you're going to have all these twists and turns in your career goals, but usually there's going to be some key decision points 3 to 5 years out, and just set your goals along those lines and then reassess.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it seems to have worked out pretty well for you in terms of your career and where you got to there, those 3 to 5 year chunks. I know early on in my career, it was always about what's the next promotion? What's the next promotion? And it was interesting. I was talking to my son recently, he's studying architecture. I said, from a college perspective, if I could do it over again, I did engineering, I wouldn't have tried to rush to graduate in 4 years. I actually would have taken a 5th year and learned a little bit better, learned a little bit deeper, and then go forward from there. So to your point of being patient, focusing in and really making sure you're involved with something that you're passionate about, I think is very important. And so as we bring everybody on, before we do that, again, Derek, thank you so much for being with us, for taking the time to share your journey. I know that just like with the other conversations with Brenda and with Chris, your conversation also is going to translate to a lot of impact in the community. I know that a lot of people will see themselves in you as well. And so let's bring everybody back on. And what I'll do is this. I'll start off with this. So as we're bringing everybody back on, let's go round robin. Brenda, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
All right. The question is, what piece of advice would you give your younger self? And you first have to say, what younger self are you giving the advice to? Is it your college younger self? Is it your early career younger self? Is it your mid-career younger self? What piece of advice for your younger self, and what place is that, or is it everything?
Yeah, so career advice is my younger self. It's a marathon and not a sprint. And that's kind of teeing up what you were just talking about with Derek, I think a little bit ago. But yeah, it's a marathon and not a sprint. Because Damien, you talked about, always looking for that next promotion. You can get a little bit competitive and you might miss the opportunity and the learning that can go along with that. And I would say that my younger self is probably early on in my career, kind of anywhere from a brand new hire up until about maybe 3 to 4 years, where you kind of look at your peers and go, how do I measure up? But we're all different. And I think we need to embrace those differences.
Awesome. Chris, how about yourself?
Advice I'd give my younger self, and I'm going to date that back to when I was probably 20, 21, somewhere in there, is just, one, you don't have it all figured out. You only think you do. Okay. But that's okay. All right. But most importantly, and I can't stress this enough, is just allow things to come. Enjoy where you are, let it all soak in, and then move on to the next, whatever that is. and they'll think it's a script. There is no script. Just be creative, and whatever you like, embed that within the process. So again, that's what I would share.
That's awesome. Thank you. Derek, how about yourself?
Thanks, Damien. Probably would address myself at age 22, 23, something like that. And, I would say probably two things. You get involved and I was very laser focused on, the tasks at hand and all the things that I thought were important. And I could have gotten more involved, whether, there weren't BRGs back then or things like that. But if there were, I don't know that I would have spent much time embracing that stuff because I was so laser focused on, the goals that were right in front of me. And I think that's really important to become a well-rounded person, and also a better team leader ultimately as you understand more perspectives, and also just have fun. You can have fun at work, too, and everything is so serious. And you think about the CPA profession. Where I started as an auditor, like Brenda and Chris, just have fun too doing it. Don't lose sight of that. You get to work with the great people, travel, do a lot of interesting things, enjoy it as well.
That's fantastic. So one more for all y'all, because a lot of people will think of the CPA profession or the finance stuff as kind of like, oh, it's boring, it's this or that. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, if you know that space, like you're a business ninja. Like the things that you can do are amazing. And so what has been one of the biggest things that you've learned in your career in the accounting space or similar? And what do you think is the best thing about it? I'll stop it at that, because I think it's like amazing. I wish I was better in that space, right? Like I'm just not as good, which is why companies like Crowe are amazing and fantastic and why we need them. But what's the biggest thing that you've gotten from your career in the profession itself and that you would recommend to people to consider it? And I'll start with Chris. I'll start with you because you've seen from multiple sides. And then Derek, I'm going to go over to you, and Brenda, I'll ask you at the end.
I learned this a long time ago, and that is that you are responsible for your career. And my first coach shared that with me. So what I learned is that anything's possible, but you have to ask. And sometimes we don't ask, we just assume we're going to stay on this path. You have to ask, but keep in mind that anything's possible.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chris. How about Derek?
As it relates to sort of the profession, I would say, someone said to me a long time ago, in the world of business, the action is in the numbers, and that there's a lot of opportunities. If you want to be able to help people and help them improve their business, you need to understand what's going on in the numbers, and that opens up a lot of doors, and that opens up a lot of possibilities for things, and it certainly has through my career, in terms of rolling up my sleeves and getting into my clients' financial information and figuring out what's happening and helping them, improve their business. So, if you have any interest, it doesn't have to be a lot of people think about, the accountants and you're just going to fill the boxes and follow all the rules, etc. And there's a lot of those stereotypes, but actually that's just table stakes, is you need to know where the numbers go in the boxes, that kind of stuff. But understanding them and understanding what's behind it and how to help your clients improve their business is really where I find it to be the most exciting.
And so actually, Brenda, if you don't mind, I'm going to shift the question a little bit because there's some that have come through. So this one, a little bit different. Is the CPA a quality auditors look for?
Yeah, so I would say certainly in a public accounting firm, if you're going to have a career in auditing, typically you would expect somebody to have their CPA, but I think there's a number of paths you can take to get that certification, if you will, but something that is typically desirable.
Awesome. And I'm going to try to do a bit of a lightning round there's a lot of questions coming through, and we may go a little bit over time, but I think it's worth it. People will be able to watch this on replay. Chris, I'm going to shoot over to you for this one. And this one is coming. It says, what are some actionable steps companies can take to support and retain employees on a non-linear career path?
I think first and foremost, you have to listen. So you have to have that infrastructure in place, whether it's a coaching network, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a sponsor that's really active. So when I hear something, I'm responding. And I think that's often where the disconnect is. We just assume you start as a staff auditor and audit that you want to remain there. But if you start as a staff auditor and auditor, and I'm your coach, you come to me and say, you know what's up with what are they doing over in tax? What's going on in consulting? Well, that would lead me to believe that you've got other interests. So just being supportive, and then as a coach, allow you to pivot. And I think we have that kind of infrastructure within Crowe that would allow you to do other things. But you have to make sure that leadership understands that and they're behind it. And then your talent and acquisition team supports that. And we push you down that path. And that's what's happened with me and many others within the firm. So that's what I would share.
That's fantastic. Now I'll ask, see who wants to answer this one. And I think it's a great question from a standpoint of sometimes people get frustrated around how do I get exposure to a company like Crowe or any big company. And so the question coming in is, it says nowadays submitting your resume to any organization, it sometimes feels like it doesn't mean anything when you do that. What advice would you have for people that are looking to get themselves visible for that want to apply to Crowe, whether they're a student or a professional? What advice do you have to be visible through the recruiting process?
Yeah, so Damien, I can start and others might want to chime in. I would say tap into your social networks. Don't be afraid to reach out like on a LinkedIn. And if you're interested in an organization like Crowe, look for people who are working for Crowe and start to develop those connections and that network and develop those relationships. One, I think you'll probably learn something from one another. Number two, it'll give more background on the organization and kind of give you that opportunity, that foot in the door, if you will, to that next step.
And one thing I'd share on top of that is it's a war for talent right now. So we're looking. Please reach out. We will find you.
Thank you very much. I was going to say, like, it is a great time to be in this, evaluating your values, checking organizations that align with your values. I think a lot of folks that are watching this, and it may be very appropriate that the Crowe logo and the ALPFA logo look very similar. There's a lot of similar values between our organizations, right? And the folks that are part of it. So I would highly encourage folks to reach out. You heard Chris say it. They're looking for great talent. And so make sure you're doing that. And one last question I will hit on, and I know we're 5 minutes over, but again, I think it's just, it works out well. So this is for everyone. Is there a pivotal point in your career that you would point to, a moment in your career that said, this was the moment I look at as what made me be able to get to where I got to today?
You know, I'll go first, and I'll say this. It was early on in my career, and I never thought that, you know, a company would lay you off. The companies do go out of business. And I think I was caught up in that, and I think I was afraid, like many of us are in that situation. And I guess after that happened to me, and I found my way to the other side of that, I think I was a lot stronger. I was a lot more confident. And I just understood business a little bit more. Okay. At the end of the day, it is a business. Okay. And sometimes the business may not go on, but that doesn't mean that there's not opportunity out there for you. That just doesn't mean that your brand is not something someone else is looking for. So that helped me a great deal. And I grew tremendously from that exercise.
I appreciate that. And for everybody to see, you can see it on the bottom of your screen right now, crowe.com/careers, to look into opportunities to be able to join this amazing family at Crowe. As we close out, I'd love to go around. Derek, I'll start with you. Chris, over to you. And then Brenda for closing out. Any final piece of advice or words of wisdom that you want to leave as we close out today?
Well, you know, it's just, we're super appreciative to have this opportunity to have viewers and to partner with ALPFA, of course, in such an amazing organization. You know, all of us, as you've already heard, have, going back to your question, was there one moment? There's been so many moments through my career that have really led to the next thing, and not to keep going back to the take things in chunks and go through your career, but I would just reiterate, embrace who you are. As Brenda said, match your passions with your talent, know where the market, know how you can help your clients, and then find an organization that really is going to value you. And I started my career in an organization that was very prestigious and very large and very intimidating in many ways. And once I felt like I was confident enough, I could pave my own path and maybe find the right organization for me and my values. And they're out there. And I would advise you, just don't settle. Don't settle, particularly in a market that we're in right now. Don't settle for where you can't be your authentic self, where you can't voice your concerns, where you can't pursue your passions. Go for it.
Chris?
I think I'd share that, or I will share that goals are very important, but goals that you write down are even more important. Somehow they gain strength and they have life and they move in a different way. I can't explain it, but when you put it on paper and you look at it, it's different. So be smart, set goals, write them down, and then hold yourself accountable. Am I making the steps to get me to that next level, whatever that means?
Awesome. I love that. Thank you, Chris. Brenda?
Yeah, so a couple different things. One is, don't be afraid to ask for support. Don't be afraid to ask for what you want, and be willing to take risks.
Awesome. So as we close out, I want to thank you again for being one phenomenal panelist, also for being a great supporter of the ALPFA, our culture. Thank you so much. I've written down words that have been said multiple times: faith, trust, risk, support, give back, listen, passion, be vulnerable. It's all just grass. I had to use that one in there as well. I think we got a lot of great insights, and I know a lot of people will be able to take this and move forward in an inspired way. It's probably the perfect way to start a Monday, to be able to have this inspiration for the week. And hopefully people will watch this multiple times to get multiple pieces of inspiration as they move forward. So again, thank you for the time, because I know you all are very busy, but this must be important to you to be able to give back to the Latino community. And so thank you for doing it. As we close out, just want to say thank you, everybody, for watching. And until next time, take care.
Thank you.